Okay, I think we got everybody here. I'd like to have a motion to reconvene in the open session.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor, roll call vote. Susan Manning,
Aye.
Susan Fox,
Aye.
Elizabeth Cook,
Aye.
Eric Hartz,
Aye.
Lorraine Gage,
Aye.
Peter Sobel,
Aye.
Andrew McKinney, aye. Motion carries. All right, we're going to move right down to public appearances. Speakers will be limited to 3 minutes each. So right now we have 5, and we're going to rotate, if that's okay with board members, whoever would like to read. So the first one I am going to open and read would be Jennifer Bustin. And her statement goes, good evening, I am Jennifer Bustin, the vocal music educator at GDS, a 20-year veteran teacher at MGSD, and member of the district's healthcare committee since its inception many years ago. I would like to make it clear that I am only speaking on behalf of myself, and I am really frustrated and disappointed to see that raising employee healthcare contribution rates is being considered. During our last round of meetings, the stakeholders recognized that raising rates would ultimately be a board decision. Yet, we had come to a sort of gentleman's agreement that the concessions that we made would offset any rate increases. To come back to us now and raise rates creates a pretty significant breach in trust. And to do it in the 11th hour, when teachers have backed away from their scenes and duties and are trying to decompress from the crazy year, is incredibly frustrating. To increase the rate effective September 1st will come as a complete surprise to some, if not most of the staff. I have a deep understanding and appreciation for our health care benefits. I have personally experienced the greatness of our benefits not once, but 3 times. I have a daughter that was born with a complex set of heart defects and has had 3 open heart surgeries and countless other expensive procedures. Our insurance has taken care of Aiden completely, even letting us go out of network to be treated by the best surgeons. Phenomenal insurance is one of the leading reasons why I am here at MG, and one of the main reasons that I stay, even after being placed on step 13 of the new salary schedule, despite my 20 years of service to this district. Our health benefits and the amount we pay for them make a huge impact of many of us here at MG. I ask that you reconsider this rate increase and acknowledge the pieces we have already given to offset healthcare costs. Thank you, Jennifer. Susan Fox, would you like to take the next one, please? You're on mute.
I said yes, and it's hard to read. It's because I had it covered by the document. Sorry. All right, this is Skygraph Statement. To the MGSD board and Dr. Olson. The main topic for tonight's board meeting is health insurance and how much the district is looking to raise the percentage that employees pay. I just completed my 10th year at Monona Grove High School. In those 10 years, I have not participated in the district's insurance plan. By not using the district's insurance plan, the district has saved thousands of dollars, and I have not been compensated in any way for these savings. Yes, MMSD employees pay a higher percentage for their health insurance, but they are also compensated with higher wages. I am looking to see what the district is going to do for those of us who do not use the district health insurance plan. In the last 10 years, the district has not had to pay a dime for my insurance. I currently have accrued 652 hours of sick time. This too is not compensated in any way. I have been told time and again that the MG benefits, i.e. insurance, retirement package, et cetera, are what make the lower wages equitable to MMSD and other districts in Dane County. The monthly cost to the district to cover an employee on all insurance plans is $1,532.53. This number multiplied by 120 months over 10 years. I have saved the district $183,903.60. As for sick time, 652 hours divided by 7.5 hours per school day comes out to be 87 school days. Staff contracts are for 190 days. By showing up to work and not using my sick time each school year, I have accrued almost one entire semester's worth of work hours, and I have saved the district almost half of my annual salary, around $24,000. I was hired in 2010 when there was a teacher compensation table. Having almost stagnant or negative wage growth compared to the annual raise and cost of living, and with employees being hired after me at individually negotiated salaries, I have lost out on tens of thousands of dollars in salary and retirement benefits. In the last 10 years, I have saved the district well over $200,000. Please come up with a plan to compensate hardworking employees who do not use the district health insurance and show up to work each day. Please give me a reason to want to stay at MG. I always hear district administration and board members say that you got into education because of students and families. Yes, I did. I also do not want to be exploited for another 10 years. That is why the district cannot recruit and retain a strong and diverse staff, the staff that are actually in the trenches working directly with the students every day. Respectfully submitted, Skygraph.
All right.
Thank you,
Okay, I will go ahead and do the next one. This is Kylie Ramirez. To MGSD School Board, I am writing to ask the board to consider slowing down the process of the proposed health insurance contributions and to collaborate with the district teachers and the MGEA. I have spent my whole professional career, 14 plus years, at Monona Grove, and I am proud to work in this district. I am disappointed, however, in the recent and sudden actions to propose an increase in employees' health insurance premium contributions from 5% to 12%. Why did the school board and administration schedule a vote on this change before communicating with staff on the district's health insurance committee or MGEA leadership? Honestly, the lack of communication and collaboration feels like a punch in the stomach. I understand that the district also knew of the potential increase after the open enrollment period last year, yet never communicated to staff the potential of an increase or to prepare for the potential. Why is that? We waited 9 months to settle a wage increase from the 2019-2020 school year and finally saw our back pay at the beginning of June. Now, less than 2 weeks later, we found out from MGEA leadership and not the district that we might be asked to contribute over double the current rate of our health care contributions. If that proposal goes through, by my calculations, which have been double checked by MGEA leadership, the increase in my health care costs would be $1,355.09 for the next school year. This calculates $113 per month. The wage increase I just received for the 2019-2020 school year was $735 or 1.4% of my salary. The change is a lot to ask for employees, especially with such little time for employees to budget this potential change. The increase I earned for the past school year pays for only 54% of the healthcare cost increase that would be proposed. What at first appeared to be a pay increase now will be a decrease. We have often been told by district leadership that our salary is not on the high end in Dane County, yet we have excellent benefits to offset the lower wages. These changes would negate those statements. In sum, I again ask the school board and administration work collaboratively with the MGEA and staff on the district's health insurance committee to come to a more transparent solution that lessens the burden on educators to cover the increased cost of insurance. Thank you. Thank you, Kylie Ramirez. Would any board member like to take one, or I can go ahead? Okay.
I can read one. I can read the MGEA one, Andrew.
Okay, thank you, Eric.
Dear Monona Grove School Board members, as you discuss changes to employees' health insurance premium contributions tonight, please consider the impact on teachers and support staff. Staff are not expecting this cut in compensation. It would come at the worst possible time for many families as they deal with the economic fallout of the COVID-19 pandemic. Teachers have lost hundreds of dollars in unpaid supervision stipends due to the school closure. Additionally, many teachers and support staff are facing a summer of lost income as well. Many of those who work a second job or teach summer school to supplement their MGSD income will suffer thousands of dollars in lost pay as the district and private sector business operate at limited capacity. Charging staff more for their benefits will only compound the economic hardship on your employees' families. We ask you to take time to work with your insurance committee, the MGEA, and other interested staff to address this issue. When we work together, we can do more. In the last 3 months, we delivered meals, provided virtual education, and stayed connected to our students' families because we worked together during the pandemic. Don't shut our voices on this important decision. While the district is currently making a greater contribution to employees' health insurance premiums than most other Dane County school districts, wages in Monona Grove remain low. Teacher salaries in Monona Grove are, on average, several $1,000s lower than their Dane County comparables. Likewise, the unionized support staff in the district have one of the lowest starting salaries in the area. We ask the board to consider the desperate impact raising all employees' contribution levels will have on staff and their families. It is not equitable for the highest paid and the lowest paid employees to see the same change in insurance contributions. Furthermore, any changes to employees' health insurance premium contributions that are effective July 1st, 2020 or September 1st, 2020 may trap staff on the district's insurance plan with no opportunity to switch to a different provider. During open enrollment in the fall of 2019, district employees selected their health insurance coverage for 2020. All information from the district provided during open enrollment referenced insurance rates that would be effective until December 31st, 2020. To suddenly increase contribution rates mid-year will forever taint the open enrollment process. How can staff ever trust the information provided during open enrollment again? It is not right to cut benefits at a time that gives employees no opportunity to make different choices to offset this loss in income. We ask the board to do 3 things. First, delay making any decisions to employee benefits until after working with staff to explore a compromise and reviewing other potential budgetary savings. Second, make any potential increases to employees' premium contributions effective January 1st, 2021, so employees can make an informed decision about their health care during open enrollment. Finally, we ask the board to make sure any changes in benefits have an equitable impact on staff incomes. Thank you for your consideration. We believe in Team MG, and we look forward to working with you on this issue. Sincerely, the teachers and support staff of the Monona Grove Education Association.
All right. Thank you, Eric. Okay, I will go ahead and take the last one here. This is from the Healthcare Committee with Scott Amira, Gio Patera, Jennifer Bussin, Tracy Ellingson, Denise Fever, Robin Jones, and Kevin Millenbank. Dear Monona Grove School Board members, as a member of the HC committee, we are collaboratively writing this afternoon to express our concerns regarding timing, trust, and the potential vote on future healthcare benefits this evening. We are hoping a vote on the agenda item to increase the employee contributions will be at a minimum be delayed. As you know, in June of 2019, the Healthcare Committee put forth a recommendation which was adopted by the board. This was following hours of research, brainstorming, and collaboration. We forwarded and you adopted increases in deductibles and copays to help offset the cost of healthcare to the district. We respectfully submitted that, given us increasing personal costs resulting in a lower plan premium for 2020. The contribution cost per employee could remain stable at 5%. A change in 2020 likely breaks trust on many levels. The district's first specific notification to the committee regarding the potential adjustment was from Superintendent Olson midday on Wednesday, June 10th, a week after the most recent meeting on June 3rd. While this told us of a potential vote, it did not include any rate information. We understand the item was discussed on school board meetings on May 13th and June 3rd. It did not include any potential rate information, which we were able to recently acquire from the board docs. Fortunately, some committee members did respond to the email from Superintendent Olson over the weekend, and he did schedule a meeting for 3:30 to 4:30 today. As we have been pivotal in doing work in this area, and we are pleased to have the opportunity for the committee to be able to provide some feedback regarding the potentials, current situation. The timing allows us little time to operate as usual for a meaningful and well thought out recommendation on a vote tonight. In addition, the timing of the virtual meeting today from 3:30 to 4:30 will leave us with little to no time to form a response to the current proposal. So we are less likely to get something updated to be read to you tonight. The committee has been meeting collaboratively over the last 5 years, and we typically follow an awesome process that involves updates from our previous meetings and opportunity to listen, share, ask clarifying questions, ask more questions, collect feedback from the people we represent, collaborate, and make a plan moving forward. Given the potential magnitude and financial impact on the district's budget, employees' budgets, and the trust we have developed from all our previous work, we are hoping you will not vote to increase contributions this evening. Please reach out to us should you have any questions. Thank you for your consideration. Thank you everyone for that response. George, do we have any more public appearances out there?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, thank you so much. Moving on to the consent agenda. May I have a motion to approve all the items 1 through 7 in the consent agenda?
I'd move approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Second. Give it to
Or
Elizabeth.
We'll give it to Lorraine. Lorraine second. Okay. All right. Any discussion? Hearing no discussions, all in favor, roll call vote. Susan Manning,
Aye.
Elizabeth Cook,
Aye.
Susan Fox,
Aye.
Eric Hartz,
Aye.
Lorraine Gage,
Aye.
Peter Sobel,
Aye.
Andrew McKinney, aye. Ayes have it, motion carries. We're going to move to recognitions.
Okay, we have several this evening. Hannah Abed, a rising sophomore at Monona Grove High School, won a gold medal in poetry performance at the Dane County NAACP AXO competition in May. Hannah joins 5 other Madison area students who will be advancing to the national competition in July. Congratulations, Hannah. 5 of Monona Grove's senior band students were included in a program by PBS Wisconsin that celebrated and honored the achievements of senior high school students from around the state. Elizabeth Stang, Abby Cabart, Anais Corona Perez, Kate Studd, and Ellie Toma are the members of the Monona Grove Soaring Winds, a woodwind quintet that also performed Pop and Circumstance for the program. Thanks also to teachers Kara Collins, Jeff Kasperick, and Janice Stone for working with the students on their performance for this program. The Monona Grove High School Black Student Union and the GDS Students of Color Union and the Monona Grove Parent Equity Council organized and led a peaceful protest march in recognition of the death of George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement. News coverage of the event can be shown on your links on your board docs. Special thank you to the BSU and SU advisors and staff, the Parent Equity Council, and our speakers, including parent Justin Neal, BSU and MGHS alumni, BSU and SCU students, and parent and school board member Lorraine Gage. Several Monona Grove teachers and staff were recently featured in the Wisconsin State Journal for their work in response to social and emotional needs of our students during the pandemic. Again, the board has a link to that feature article on their board docs. Finally, despite all the challenges we've encountered over the last 3 months, students and staff at Monona Grove have reached the end of the school year. For most of us, work and family expectations shifted drastically. For our students, our families, and our community, we want to thank you for your support and for navigating this alongside us. We couldn't have done this without you. For our teachers and staff, we are incredibly proud of all you have done and all that you have made possible for our students. Thank you for being on Team MG.
All right, thank you. Was there any more? Susan Manning?
There was also an excellent article, I think it was yesterday morning's Wisconsin State Journal, about the Wednesday night event. It was very well done. So people can actually pull that up if they want to read that. It was very
Yeah.
good.
It's actually linked here in the board docs.
Oh, great.
That was a nice article.
All right. Okay, moving on to correspondence.
Actually, sorry, I had my
Got it?
screen again. Could I just say something about that? I did I sent you all an email today with some of the other correspondence we got. I sent out our resolutions related to funding to our legislators on June 3rd, I think, and I started getting responses back. But out of the 40 people they went to, we've only gotten 6 back. So I originally had included Senator Baldwin's here because it was the most substantive one. It talked about some of the efforts she's made. We got a couple others. Most of them were more saying they'd try to do what they can. And then we had another one today from Representative Anderson that was a little bit different tone. And he's very supportive of public schools and Monona Grove as our representative, but saying that the budget repair bill is likely to be discussed, and he was not real optimistic about that schools would fare well under it. We heard one other legislator commented they thought they might take up the budget repair bill in July, but what we're still hearing from other groups is that it's not likely that they will actually pass anything until after the November elections, which makes it a little difficult to be in the position we're now in now, trying to plan a budget for next year. That's the way it seems to work. So I did send the other responses to you just to let you know we've only had 6 responses, and that's how it goes.
Thank you, Susan Fox. Susan Manning?
We didn't get the Monona Grove Education Foundation update on the agenda. So when that happens, sometimes I just read it in this section. And I just want to give you, they met on June 9th, 2020. The board received an update on scholarships. The MGEF scholarships were awarded at the virtual senior recognition event. There was some concern stated that MGF was not recognized for their awards, and Dan is checking on this. The foundation is continuing to work on adding information to their website, which apparently is expanding beautifully. So we encourage you to go to that and look at that with the goal of increasing communication with the community. There's work continuing on a donation to fund 4 scholarships in honor of Ann Ahern. So we would encourage you to support those scholarship contributions. There's work starting on plans to set up an endowment fund for the new 3-5 buildings, similar to each of our buildings. For those of you who are newer, have an endowment fund from contributions, and then it gives the principals a little bit of money each year to use. Then there was a discussion about the annual donation letter, approval of an investment resolution, and revision of the scholarship policy. They're trying to make plans for the annual Monona Grove Education Foundation celebration for 2020. A tentative plan is to do the event virtually, and there were several ideas for staging an event, including a golf ball drop. So you had to be there and listen to the discussion on that to see how much fun it sounded like it would be. The next meeting is July 14th, 2024. Thank you.
Right. Moving to superintendent report.
Okay, well, we have a number of items tonight, and also joining us, we have Krista Foster and Lisa Hype, also available as a team. You know, a number of these things, Krista and Lisa have been directly involved with the planning. And so we just wanted to give the board an update on where we're at as far as how we wrapped up the school year, moving into summer school, and then, planning moving ahead to the fall. So first of all, with regard to the summer school, there are 2 links on your board docs. The first is information that is shared with our families about summer learning opportunities and resources. And then the second link is specifically about our summer school program. And as you know, that we've had to adjust as well our summer school program. So we are holding it on the same dates and with virtual options at all of our grade levels. And again, there's several links and some sample schedules and so on. But why don't I just stop there and see if there are any specific questions anyone has regarding the summer school programming.
How many families have registered for summer school?
Lisa, do you?
Yeah. So normally we have nearly 1,000 students participate, but because this is virtual, we've seen a significant reduction. We're probably right around 300 students participating in our summer programming virtually this summer.
And similarly, how many of our staff members are involved compared to what the usual? Do we know about approximately? I mean, I glimpsed at the schedules and it wasn't clear to me how all that worked.
This summer, we will have fewer than 30 staff members participating in summer programming.
Hey, Lisa, for technology purposes, the kids that signed up for summer school, were they able to keep their Chromebooks, or do they have to come and get them again?
We purposely did not collect devices yet for that reason. We wanted to ensure that all students would have a device. And then if we had any students enroll in our summer programming who live in our district but don't attend an MJ school during the school year, we also have devices available for them as well. So the district will provide a device for every student who participates in summer programming.
I was counting that at least once, sorry.
Okay. Was there any more questions? All right, Dan, you want to go?
Okay, the second item, whoops. Yeah, I'm not muted. Okay, second item, planning for the fall. Okay, and so we've been discussing for quite some time, but most of our real planning, of course, has been getting through this school closure in the spring, and then some initial discussions about what fall might look like. And now we're fully into, of course, planning for the fall. And so there are a number of resource documents I attached for you. First of all, DPI is coming out with guidance next Monday. We've been waiting for that now for several weeks. And in a conference call I had today statewide, I think one of the positive things we're going to see in the guidance is really more from the nursing end to give very clear guidance to and best practices for school districts to help us manage kind of the safe environment, about expectations and recommendations with regard to social distancing, with regard to having cleaning in schools, with regard to making sure that students and staff are able to attend, and with regard to illnesses and how we monitor that and so on. And so even with that, even templates for us, as we have to put together our own safety plans, for the event of school opening. So that will certainly be welcome guidance. What we expect to get a lot less of is guidance about how to deliver instruction. It's been very broad, the information we've gotten from DPI about, something we've talked about for quite some time: possible face-to-face, possible hybrid, possible virtual. And so honestly, as we work through those different scenarios, collaboration with other school districts and what they're thinking, obviously our team here, administrators and teachers, as we work through that, we're really looking at our first dig into some of those options coming up this Thursday. We've got an admin training retreat. It also includes some of our teacher leaders to really take that first look about, okay, all these options that are on the table, which of those might be viable? What are the things that we need to figure out? We're far from making any kind of decisions. Our goal would be that when we come back in the July meeting to either have a recommended plan or be very close to having it narrowed down to what fall might look like at that time. So to help guide that work, there's an attachment of a family survey that we conducted in June. We had conducted one early on to get some initial feedback about our virtual learning. And then this was really helped to give us additional feedback at the end about how things really went. And then, a little bit of planning for the future, knowing that in all likelihood, there's going to be some sort of virtual component. What are some things that we need to do better in planning forward? And then the next document is a summary of our summer curriculum work. As you may be aware that, we've always had hours reserved for curriculum planning with teachers over the summer, knowing that we're going to have some sort of virtual component in the fall. We're dedicating our time to give teachers an opportunity to work on that virtual planning. We're also enhancing our own budget with CARES federal money to help support that, so that every teacher can participate. We certainly, in this virtual environment, want to make it as flexible as possible for teacher schedules. That's always one of the big challenges with summer curriculum work, is getting people together. So that's one positive about doing some of this work virtually, is a lot more flexibility. And then I mentioned that we're going to have that first crack at looking at some of the options. There's the document that just kind of our worksheet of some of the different options that we're going to consider here moving forward. And then the last link is the latest Dane County emergency order that came out this week, or effective yesterday, with some additional guidance, specifically with schools. As we've moved along, we've been communicating really closely. Krista and Katie sit in on all the emergency management calls to make sure we have the most up-to-date information from the county, and giving us guidance as they work through and help us work through the CDC guidelines and DHS guidelines. All right, so I said a mouthful. There's a lot of information there. That's just kind of the big picture. Both Krista and Lisa have been intensely involved with the planning and all these details. And so I think I'd like to kind of, just take your questions that you might have, and we can talk as much in depth about any of these issues as you like. This is obviously really important in this planning phase, and this is our first opportunity, I think, to have a real in-depth discussion about what the plannings look like and what we're thinking things might look like in the fall, and what are the considerations that we need to look at. So before we turn over to questions, I guess I'll first give an opportunity for Krista or Lisa. Is there anything that you want to add to either that, expand upon or correct something that I said if I didn't say it correctly? And okay. All right, well, let's just open up to board questions then, or things that you'd like a little bit more detail upon.
All right, I have a question.
Go ahead, Peter.
One of the things to consider, and one of the things that we've been looking at, is the ventilation systems. There are some key parameters to ventilation that dramatically change the safety in a particular room or environment. And we have buildings of different ages built to different standards. And one of the things we may wish to do, well, we probably should do, is to look at the ventilation systems, and the number that's sort of critical is the air changes per hour in a different building. And that might serve to understand that information, might serve as guidance to what we can do and can't do, or should or shouldn't do in any given building. And actually, there's another key parameter, that's humidity. So those that have controlled humidity, we may end up with different considerations for what we can do. So I would suggest, if you haven't looked at that already, those numbers we compile and compare them to what sort of recommendations are to minimize transfer and see what we can minimize viral infection rates and see what we can do.
Okay, and I don't know, Jared, if you've begun any those kind of discussions. I know that certainly because we're in the middle of all of our renovation and construction projects, obviously we've got our team on hand to provide assistance with that. McKinstry, of course, is one of the folks that help us with that. EUA actually is putting together a team as well to specifically assist schools, for, in general, all kinds of facility, planning on that respect. I haven't personally been involved in any of the conversations about that kind of detail yet. But we certainly have the resources available. Jared, I don't know if you have anything to add about that.
Yep, so we've had our initial conversations. Obviously, CDC is releasing information, and it does change. We are now waiting for DPI's release of theirs on June 22nd, in hopes that between those two, we'll have a better idea. But we do have McKinstry and our HVAC teams, NAMI, already looking at that. Obviously, the one area that will be a challenge will be Winnequa, because the whole new HVAC system will not be up until the second summer. But obviously, and that's where most of our humidity issues occur at. However, we are looking at what can we bring in for portable. In addition to that, I have submitted the claim to put us on the claim list for FEMA, in case there's additional things that we need, such as dehumidifiers or portable air exchange systems as well. So
thanks. I'm glad to hear that you guys are considering that already. And then one of the key factors is, when the late fall sets in, maintaining a minimum level of humidity is important in reducing the spread of viruses.
Susan Manning, and then Elizabeth Cook.
Dan, who are you using to give you medical safety guidance?
Thus far, as we're just beginning, has been primarily through Public Health Dane County and DPI's nursing services. And Krista, if you could expand upon that, is that?
Sure, yeah, that's accurate. I mean, we're certainly, our nursing team is very engaged with the DPI team as well as the public health along with Katie and I. So we're really sort of engaging in those conversations, which are countywide and statewide, and sort of looking to that for guidance.
I just want to be reassured that we are using high level, and I think we'll get some of that through Dane County Public Health, high level medical guidance, because right now it's very clear that the safety measure is a shield, is to wear the shield. It protects you and it protects them. The face mask at this point only protects them to most extent, and the research is very clear on that. As well as doing temperature gauging as people enter and exit, setting up whatever, if the limitations would be at 6 feet, those kinds of things.
Yeah,
So-
those are all topics that I use regularly with, and public health has provided a lot of guidance on that. And in fact, even most recently, there is specific guidance around the use of masks and face coverings. And then the shield is a secondary, face shields is actually a secondary option because there's actually less protection. But of course, in an educational setting, people are looking to that as an option for those instances, maybe student is deaf or hard of hearing, or you know, just that visual that is clearly important. But actually, we just received some updated guidance on that.
So are you, Krista, are you getting guidance that's telling you that the mask is more protective than the face shield?
We can share it's in the public health notes from the most recent calls. That's been a common question. I think schools are
So
trying to.
you can send that to me, but I have the data and the research from University of Wisconsin and University of Iowa that is straight from their board and their high level people, straight from the governor of Iowa's press conference a week ago. Again, in addition, the shield is extremely more comfortable because it doesn't obstruct your breathing. So again, I just want to make sure, generally, if you wear the protection, the healthcare experts seem to feel it has to be the full face that curves.
Yeah, I think there's some discrepancy or difference in terms of what people are, of what type of shields are medically available versus commonly available. But again, those are certainly the questions that we're relying on. Like our nursing team and the state nursing team and public health is really taking a lead on a lot of that and fielding a lot of those questions on a weekly basis. That's a lot of what Katie and I hear responses to, and they're very responsive in terms of engaging as I think schools start to think about what will fall look like and what are some of our realistic questions. So yeah, we're getting a lot of guidance and feedback, and GPI, you know, again, is working with public health as well. So.
Okay, Elizabeth, then Lorraine, and then Eric.
All right, I have two comments and then a wondering, I guess. I won't even call it a question. I'll call it wondering. So my first comment is I want to applaud you both, Lisa and Krista, for the work that you've done thus far. I thought the survey was really simple. You know, as a parent, it was really easy to fill out and very useful. I also appreciated the work that you did in terms of summer school planning. I know it's not difficult, or it's difficult, right, to like have that same continuity of support and that like level of like standard that we keep, right, kind of within the context. So I appreciate that. And I know that that was not that's not a small task. The second commentary I wanted to say in regards to sort of the public health pieces, I appreciate the connection, keeping connection with local public health as well as DPI. I know particularly the school nursing consultant at DPI is really invested and involved with NASN, which is the National Association of School Nurses. They've been doing a ton around COVID response work in coordination with the CDC as well. And the CDC is also working on like in addition to their guidance, like really working on like really practical, tangible, technical assistance elements to it. And so more to come there for sure. But I think the more that everyone is sort of funneling into those kind of larger organizations, and then that gets funneled down and contextualized, I think it just helps like think about the noise in the space in a lot of a different way. So those are my two comments. My wondering is this. So when you think about kind of COVID transition, and I think Lisa, as Krista, you all know, but for my fellow board members, like I think about this sort of a lot in like in general. So there's like multiple things to juggle, right? So there's like prevention, like COVID prevention, mitigation, suppression. There is clearly, and if you look at the survey results, this idea of like missing school, right? So that kind of connectionness and what does it feel like to kind of get back into the system. There's obviously like academic slide and what does it mean to sort of be out of traditional schooling for so long, right? And how do we help to support that? And then there's just like having safe and supportive environments, both, you know, in person and virtually. And so my wondering that I have, right, knowing that you clearly don't have any answers for that, sort of how are you conceptualizing those things, approaching those things? And then secondarily to that, like, what does our staff prep look like? Because then another concern I have is that then you think about like the additional burden of staff, you think about kind of various risk factors as it relates to staff, though, you know, and professional development on use of technology and kind of all those things that I think everyone sort of did ad hoc, understandably so, but now we have time to sort of pause about. So just curious about like, what are you thinking?
I think I can talk to that a little bit. In the document shared with you, the MGSD Summer 2020 curriculum work, it outlines for staff some areas that we are recommending they focus on. And the reason we decided to ask staff to really spend some time on strengthening the virtual learning options is because we know our staff is pretty great face-to-face. And that if that's how we return, we're confident that what's needed will be a sort of a lighter lift. And if we need to remain virtual, and that's just been so new for so many people that's the harder work. So in order to help prepare them for what might be some virtual learning still in the fall, and again, we don't know, but just in case, we've asked staff to really spend summer hours focusing on we already have essential standards outlined, but what are the limited essential standards for that first quarter that you would really prioritize for a grade level? And then look at how you can integrate some of the standards from March till the end of the year, how you could maybe readdress some of those skills in the current grade level work. So giving some more opportunity for students to engage in the skills from the previous grade level, but yet still remain in current grade level work. And that's tricky, but that's our hope that we can have some time to plan around that. And then virtual learning tools. Again, our staff did a really remarkable job on a dime shifting to virtual learning, but we also know that with some time and some more preparation, we can do better. We can increase the engagement for students. We can have more synchronous time between teacher and students. We can use different tools. We really focused on the bare minimum of tools during this recent closure, but there are other tools out there that with some time for teachers to explore those, we're confident we can include those in our programming. And then the third part that we're asking staff to spend some time focusing on is really looking at the intentional and ongoing relationship building and social emotional needs of students. And that can apply when they return face-to-face or if we must remain virtual. So really, again, looking at how are you including like inclusion activities, engagement strategies. We have something called an optimistic closure for every lesson. So sort of leaving kids feeling seen and valued and connected to. So that's sort of our outline, and I know that our staff will make great strides towards that. It still is a lot of work, and it won't be ideal, but that's our plan.
I may use the phrase optimistic closure every time I go to end my work day. Like, I'm just gonna have an optimistic closure right now. Thank you very much. I love that. Thank you, Lisa. I don't know. Sorry, Chris. I don't know if you had anything that you wanted to add there or say.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add is, in addition to that, it's a great partnership. The student services team is using their allocated hours to really be thoughtful about, of course, we kind of look at universal SEL normally, but where do we need to, like similar to what Lisa said, like what are some standards we really need to hone in on? What needs of students and families may have changed due to school closure? And like, how do we maybe make adjustments in terms of our like assessment and response system to make sure that we're meeting what's become a wider range of student and family needs. So
yeah,
they're meeting by grade level sort of that they serve to do some conscious planning around that. Yeah, that's really pretty COVID specific.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. And something I've been thinking about in general, and then I'll let Lorraine go, is specific around identification, right? Around student engagement, and like particularly for students who are physically there, but like, so virtually there potentially, but like disengaged, and what kind of the observational changes need to be in a virtual environment. And so I don't have any like solutions on that, but it's just something I've been thinking about in terms of like, how do you train teachers to have a different eye, right? When you're sort of looking at like this like flat figure as opposed to kind of what you would see in a normal building. And obviously, like, you know, truancy and attendance issues with coming around or whatever else, and certainly compensatory services for students with IEPs or students who need intervention.
Yeah, and how do we use what we learned from these last 3 months? I mean, it's certainly there, like the teams are pretty aware and teachers are certainly aware, like there are some social emotional needs with maybe a different group of students who are like really impacted. But when school is a place that you feel connected and safe and positive about, when that's removed, like that impacted a different group of students in addition to students we fully anticipated it would impact. So I think they're really thinking about that, you know, what you mentioned around what does it mean to be actively engaged? What kind of support can we provide if school doesn't look like school normally does, and who needs to access those supports too.
Great.
So yeah, you're right on with some of the patterns that we've noticed.
Okay, great, thanks. I will pause now, but it's a sort of I'm very interested in our response here. And to the extent that, you know, I could be helpful or useful, I'm always happy to, but I appreciate the update.
Lorraine?
Sure, my questions are kind of like Susan Manning. Just kind of thinking ahead, if we are going to go back to school in person, if we have enough or order enough PPE for our students and staff. So have we kind of thought about that?
Yeah, and no doubt that's one of the things early on as we look at, you know, what the safety precautions, what do we need to have in place? Interestingly, just were informed by DPI this afternoon that they've been working in partnership with State Emergency Operations Center, and that they are going to provide for all school districts in Wisconsin a large number of masks and infrared thermometers. And so it's based upon your school enrollment. So we were informed that we're going to receive 7,000 masks and 14 thermometers, you know, for our district. And so that's just the first start. But that's the one thing that, as far as getting those, that we're really appreciative and hopeful that we'll continue to get that support from DPI and public health. So we're feeling a lot better about that than even a few weeks ago. That was my question as well. Boy, there's a lot of planning that needs to happen. Are we going to be able to get access? And so DPI and their school nursing services are really stepping up, understanding that school districts need help with that. So some we'll keep you informed on, but the initial planning right now, we're looking at, you know, I feel more optimistic that yes, we'll have things in place.
Great.
I shouldn't say that we have to have things in place, but that it'll be, you know, a plan earlier than later.
The things in place are coming into place, which is good.
Thank you.
Eric?
Dan or Krista, I don't know who would be best to answer this, but I was on one of the calls with the governor for teachers, and one of the big concerns of a lot of teachers was testing. Has there been any discussion about testing for staff or students that would like to be tested if they're going in and out of the schools? And there's a lot, and we do end up in session in the fall.
That's a really good question. I don't think we have any answers to that as of today, unless Dan, you have any updates that you want to share. It certainly comes up as an option. I think the availability of testing has certainly, increased, and maybe sort of, I said, a month and a half ago, that maybe wasn't even an option we could consider. By the time September rolls around, maybe we'll have more information on that. I will, and Katie, feel free to jump into. I feel like that's a topic that we don't usually get a lot of answers to.
My concern was if the expectation is that teachers are going to be teaching in a dangerous environment, that and they want to be tested, that we should make sure that there's some way that we can do that. And that would be the same for any students that are going to the school too, or parents of students that are going to the school.
I think it's certainly when it comes to that navigation of the safety question, like that is an important, I think a lot of people would agree that that's an important factor to consider when you're making an assessment of how safe your options are.
The only thing I would add is the public health has made their community site available, and they keep extending how long that's going to be available. And that's one of the metrics for Dane County to continue moving forward. And so I would certainly hope that would be a trend, that we continue seeing that testing is available, that is available to everyone. It is free as far as I understand it, and there's no cost to insurance, even if you end up going to a clinic. So I do think that they've extended that deadline a couple of times. And again, as a metric for continuing forward, I hope that we continue to see that large testing sites continue to be available for anyone in the community.
Yeah, I agree. When I say I'm a little more optimistic than I was a month ago, that's the big factor. I think the availability and the increased availability of the free community testing is a variable that maybe wasn't in place a while back. So I agree with Katie.
Elizabeth?
On the same line around staff and safety, I'm curious about if you've had conversation with staff around their level of comfort coming back. Are we thinking about, like, if we're in some sort of hybridization, that staff would have the option of whether they would want to be more of a virtual instructor versus an in-person instructor? Or like, have we, and I guess not an or, are we worried about like retention of staff or staff not coming back because of safety issues?
Yeah, I've been involved in a lot of discussions. We have not had those discussions specifically with staff yet. And part of that is working through legal counsel on kind of the HR component about, what are the options there as far as choice versus, people that, what all the different things that come into play, whether it be the new, federal Leave Act, the, FMLA, ADA, all that comes together. So there are some districts that, have talked about, surveying staff now to get some feedback. Some of our attorneys have cautioned us to be careful about what we survey until we kind of know what the parameters are. So absolutely, that's on that to-do list this summer as well, early to, as soon as possible to have an idea, okay, how is that going to play? And, are we able to offer choice as you described? And so I think that we'll be getting more guidance on that, soon.
Okay. Any more questions?
Yeah, I have one.
Go ahead, Peter.
First of all, I was very encouraged to hear your responses to Elizabeth's first questions about the steps you've taken relative to the virtual learning, because I think we're going to have that for a while. In particular, I would like to hearing the phrase to consider what we've learned over the last 3 months. And so my question is, what relative, especially to equity, what have you learned over the last 3 months, and what in addition do we need to do to prepare for the fall? In particular, is there any additional resources that we need to improve the situation?
Would you like to start?
Yeah, I'm probably more observation than answer. I think, when talking amongst our team and sort of thinking about equity and access and some of the surveys that we put out, just even technology access, hotspot, levels of engagement. I certainly, the feeling of the team just based on who we're engaging with and what challenges we came across is, the students and families who are typically more marginalized in our setting were disproportionately impacted, in this setting as well. I don't think we had any surprises there. I mean, of course there were, and I should mention this, there are a handful of students for whom, this virtual learning environment served a purpose that school didn't fill. So that, certainly there were a handful of students who experienced some success and it matched a learning style. And, so just mention that, but I think some of our concerns with equity and access just wasn't necessarily a surprise, but were reinforced. I guess, I don't know if this is a resource issue, for schools to consider, but I think what we watched were the trends of how many people accessed the lunch options, how many people reached out using either our student services form or directly contacting folks in school around resources and support with resources. Our social workers and student services staff certainly spent quite a bit of time helping families who've never had to access external resources, county resources for food, housing, other types of support, and just kind of getting involved in that system and using 211 and some other resources. That was certainly I don't know if it's but a role shift in the amount of time spent on that. And we anticipate with unemployment levels and the ongoing impacts of COVID, we certainly anticipate that to be an ongoing need for sure. So I'll pause there and let others kind of add in as well.
Yeah,
Peter,
I guess my concern is that we don't develop increase, in distribution where we're leaving some students behind.
Yeah, and without question, Peter, that is, and we all know that that's a really important issue. And so kind of as Chris described, I think, looking at, our staff knows which students, fall in those categories that and as described. And so I think that's certainly part of the planning process for the fall as well, is what can we do, to, not only mitigate, but to make sure that we have the same level of support as we normally would, if not better, and in what kind of setting. And that it should depend on circumstances as far as, we've talked about what if we have some sort of hybrid approach where some people are, when some students are virtual, some are in school, and how do you decide, which students are where? And that's got to be part of that conversation as well, that it's not just the students that are typically marginalized that who have been, that are assigned or provided, different things based upon their circumstances. So those are all part of the conversation to make sure that, in whatever consideration we come up with. So I think it's the same thing. We don't have answers that yet, but I think I absolutely know that our staff is well aware and advocating for our kids, and that will be part of the plan.
Would it be possible to prepare some of those numbers for us? Like just high level, thinking about, meal access, thinking about engagement numbers in the virtual space. There's thinking of people who access the student services forum, which I thought was really great, and I was glad we offered it. But I would love to just sort of see a high level profile of kind of what our district looked like, felt like, sound like during this period of time. I think that could be really useful.
Sure.
And yeah, and what would our measures of success be, or our measures of not being successful, and how do we track and keep an eye on that?
When I think some of those initial, like even the questions from the survey, like technology access, did we provide a minimum access? And I think that's actually an area where we did have some success. And thankfully we were set up with the one-to-one, and, we're prepared with some hotspots. And I think that's an easy, or not easy, because it wasn't easy everywhere, but, have we at least provided that level of access? Do we have the capacity to respond when students are reaching out, for support or needing or families are making a particular request for support? That the student services request, we did get, I want to estimate maybe close to 30 different, and again, for an online form, and people also were certainly contacting people directly. And it was a range, of student social emotional needs, family needs, a lot toward the end of needing support with resources and things like that. So we have kind of looked at that. those patterns, and then added that in, of course, with the experience of the people responding to, family questions and needs as well. So I do think, and Jared, of course, has done a nice job keeping, I don't have it off the top of my head, but we tracked the numbers of folks accessing the lunch, and we saw pretty dramatic increases over time, and heard a lot of anecdotal feedback that like this was really something that was very much not even just appreciated, but necessary for families to kind of keep afloat. So, we take all that into consideration. And I'm here, anytime we discuss like on the options worksheet, I think that that lens of equity, if we were to decide this, who would anybody be more potentially negatively impacted than others? I think so pretty confident that we'll have those conversations when we analyze those options too.
Okay, Susan Manning.
And I just wanted to add, again, thank yous to all the staff that worked on so many things. And again, because Krista mentioned it, the meals were incredible. And the staff that helped and came in and did more work. And then, again, as Krista said, there were stories. So there was, in the beginning, you could only take a certain number of meals for the kids that were in the car or something like that. And this one car didn't hold enough children to get the right number of meals. And people were so adaptable and so flexible and so thoughtful. And also in their teaching of the students. It was, to hear the stories was pretty amazing. We should write a book. It was incredible.
All right. Any more questions? All right, go ahead, Dan. You can keep moving on here.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then just a quick update with school naming committee. We're back on track with our meeting schedule now. So we're scheduled to meet again next week on the 23rd. Originally, the goal was, or the charge was, to bring a recommendation to the board by the August meeting. I think it's possible that the committee might wrap up their recommendation at our next meeting next week, which would be great. Then we can bring it to the board for consideration in July. So more to come soon on that.
Susan Manning.
Dan, one of the questions that I heard was maybe, and it may have even been part of watching the meeting and kind of the direction you were going, but there appeared to be some thought about just starting with naming the new building so that the board could move forward on that and work on that piece. And then any of the additional work that they're doing, there wouldn't be as tight a time frame on that. Is that correct? Or have you thought it?
Yeah, well, and we do have a group working on a draft, of the written recommendation. So what will come to the board, eventually we will get, consensus from the committee on a recommendation. And I think with that, trying to write it in a way for the board, for it's useful for you to make your, obviously you're the decision makers. And so that's the goal. Here are the things that were discussed by the committee. I think you're right. I think some things might be, here's our recommendation. Some of the part of what the document might be, here's some considerations for the board. Here's some things that we talked about, some kind of footnotes and so on. So I think that's the goal, is to write something that that gives the board good background information to make your decisions with, as opposed to as simple, here's the recommendation, yes or no.
Well, and I guess I was just thinking more about the board timing and our focus and the need to name the new building, and then, mixing, going to operational referendum and any other, going out into the community and communicating and working on the building and the planning and the virtual learning, that maybe two parts to the approach. I don't know, but that's, when you look at what's in front of us right now and the work that we have to do and how to prioritize it, it would be probably easier for us if we prioritize the building name and then the other work as we move forward. Because I mean, it's been February since we talked about a presentation on the advanced learning program. And I understand why we're where we are. It might be, I don't know how you want to prioritize that.
Sure, yeah. And I would say, and I appreciate that, Susan, and I think that's really going to be the board's decision how to prioritize. Without question, the new school, we have to have a name for the new school. Okay, so that without question is priority one. As far as any other recommendations, that will be completely up to the board about what you do with them, and as well as the timeline, with that. I'm not so sure that's the committee's role to suggest timelines. I'm not sure that, they're necessarily aware as much of the board work. I think for them, it's more, here's the things the board, they would, recommend the board consider. So, but I think that'll be the initial board discussion that we have without question is the timeline and the approach to take.
All right, any other questions? All right, hearing none. We will go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, one final item. Just wanted to just real briefly note it was the work of our Parent Equity Council, and so we are meeting again this week to debrief, from the event, and I just I know we talked about this a little bit, but just so all the board members are aware, this group has been phenomenal, and initially more of it kind of an advisory committee, but as far as really taking action and helping connect our school to the community has really been a real positive thing and a real powerful thing for that group that's going to really help us moving forward. I think I mentioned before that at the last planning meeting, we actually had the local police chiefs join us with the group. And I think we have a real opportunity for partnerships or improving our partnerships with the community and sharing and training for staff as well. So as we move ahead, I certainly want to keep the board updated, but I just want to let you know that last summer we kind of took time off and didn't meet. We are going to continue to meet through the summer because there's important work to do and a lot of momentum right now, and really grateful that we have this group and the individuals that are on it. So keep you updated.
Actually,
All
I
right,
just have one
Susan
question
Fox.
kind of related to that. Given that the summer curriculum work is all devoted to the COVID-related planning, which certainly makes sense because it sounds pretty overwhelming as I listen to this whole conversation, all the things I've been reading, conversations with teachers on all the difficulties, even from all the shared things that go on in an elementary classroom that you're probably not going to be able to do. It's rethinking everything, which is overwhelming. But given that, I also don't want us to lose momentum or lose the thought process of our curriculum in general in terms of equity, African-American history, all those pieces that we've talked about. I know we just did a social studies review a year or so ago, and I think we may have missed some things. So I just don't want us to lose sight of that either in the course of this whole process.
Yeah. Thank you, Susan. I'm glad you brought that up. And I should have mentioned it. That will be a topic of discussion with our council as well this week. And actually just this week, Lisa, Krista, Shelby, and myself met just to talk about that very topic, about where are we in our work, specifically with Black history, history with our Indigenous, people. And as you mentioned, we do have a review process. I think our teachers, I think, have done a great job. We've made strides. Clearly, as continual work. And we've talked about, given that we have a cycle, we have other things, but how can those conversations still continue and not wait for the next cycle, to come up as well. So, yeah, and I think so like I said, Shelby's going to be prepared to speak to the council about that this week, and certainly something, we've talked, and Eric, we haven't talked recently about the TLE committee, and obviously we're going to start planning with that as well. What role might that committee as well play?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody. Moving on, there will be no board reports. So we will go ahead and move to possible action items. First item is the employee contribution for health insurance benefits.
Okay, I guess I'll just kick it off. With, you obviously heard from the public comment earlier, reaction from some of our staff with regard to the discussions the board is having about our health insurance premiums and how that, impacts our budget. So as you know, this is something the board's been discussing, for some time. So I think the documents that have been shared with you are documents you've seen before, and we tried to just put a summary of the planning and the recommendations that we've had in place. And so with that, I guess I will start that based upon the discussion, and this is a really important thing and a big impact on our staff. As the board discussed this, I would support the recommendation of not taking a vote this evening, so that we have some additional opportunity for some additional dialogue before any decisions are made. So with that, I think you still should take time tonight to talk about the options, the budget impact, make sure all of our board members really understand if there are any remaining questions about, the process, the timelines, and the options that the board has, in making decisions about health insurance. So Jared has prepared all the financial documents and can certainly answer any questions about, procedural piece about budget, as well as, options that the board has before it. So with that, I think maybe just turn it over to you guys for discussion and share your thoughts or questions.
I guess, do we want a formal motion to put off action on this, or do you find, is that not necessary? I mean, I'm willing to just move that we postpone any decision on employee contribution of health insurance benefits until we've met with the MGA and have had more time for discussion. But
I would agree with Susan. I don't know if discussing it without prior meeting would, be a good thing. That's just how I feel about it. So
Well,
I wasn't saying we shouldn't talk about it. I just didn't know whether we wanted a formal motion not to make a decision tonight, or if we're just all in agreement that we aren't going to. That's fine too. I don't know that we need a formal motion. Dan,
procedurally, we have to have a motion that we're debating to postpone, and since nobody's introduced a motion to approve it, then we don't have anything to postpone at this moment.
Well, we could treat it as a discussion item, could we not?
Exactly.
It's just so it doesn't need a motion. Otherwise, if I made a motion to postpone it, I would still figure there'd be discussion after it. So either way,
Right.
I just didn't know if we don't need one, we don't need one, and we could just discuss it. That's okay. I think there's some merit to discussing some of the things that were brought up by the insurance committee today, just so that people have time to turn it over in their minds through the week. We'll be discussing them again on Thursday at the 4 o'clock personnel meeting. And then presumably, we may have a board meeting next week to potentially make a decision, because this is all tied in with the next 3 items on the agenda, the preliminary budget, and the other 2 items. We can't really decide on any of those until we make some decision about the insurance, which needs to be done in June. So I don't know, do you want to talk about some of the things that, that we heard? We heard, they were outlined pretty well in the statements that we heard today. There were various possibilities offered. One was that we consider, I think the biggest problem, and I'm not sure that everyone still understands this in terms of staff, is that we are facing this deficit in this next school year. So we have to have a solution for this next school year. That does not preclude continuing discussions well into the school year to make additional changes and that whatever, and to look for various things, various other ways we may trim our budget. But we do have to find some savings now, essentially, meaning June, July, and we can't postpone that. So there does have to be some kind of decision made. And there are impacts if we, for example, would do a 5% increase and make it effective January 1st instead of July 1st and September 1st for teaching and the other staff. The amount of savings is cut in half. So it's cut to 170,000, meaning we have to find that 170,000 somewhere else. Building budgets would be the first thing to look at. I don't know if we can get that much out of that. We'd have to look somewhere else to get that. if we, and that doesn't mean it's not possible, if we would do something different, and I don't have, no, I didn't figure out the numbers on this, but if we, let's say, decided to move it to a 3% increase this year with a thought that it might have to go up next year, but maybe not, depending on what happens during the year, what would that do in terms of savings? That would clearly cut the savings yet again. But, you know, then where else could we find additional money? I'm trying to think of what some of the other things were. I mean, I think it's also important to understand that the recent contract settlement was for this past year, so we're just going into the next year. We're already not seeing a healthy budget in terms of being able to offer more than the CPI. You know, we're not sure where we are with that, but we're already pretty tight. And so, you know, it's weighing salaries versus benefits. It comes down to a lot of that. So I guess I'd like all of us to be thinking about that over this next week, and then we'll have additional discussion on Wednesday. I don't know if people have anything to add from the insurance meeting. I just listened today because I'm not a member of that committee, but
Elizabeth Cook.
Thanks for laying all that out, Suzanne. I really appreciate that. I thought it was really clear. I guess I just have a question. So I think one of the other ideas that came up in one of the statements or the letters was around an uneven distribution of contribution, right? Based on like kind of wage, right? So people who make more money would contribute more, people who make less money maybe would contribute less. And I was just kind of curious about either from you, Jared, or from anyone who's on or Dan, or anyone who's on the committee, like, is that even a viable option potentially to entertain, or what would something like that potentially look like? I thought that was an interesting option when you think about kind of like proportion of impact, right?
right.
So I was just curious.
Thank you for adding that, because that was another thing that came up.
That's something that we haven't explored, but I've seen it done in other districts. I've seen it done in other private industry. So it's not something that's not common. It's just, you know, something we haven't looked at. And I don't think I've seen it across Dane County, but that doesn't mean that we can't explore that.
Yeah, my understanding is that that's what Madison has had. And I assume they retained it with their current increase. They did increase it from 3% to 6%. And then in addition, also made changes in their plan just because the timing worked out for them if they could do that with additional co-pays for this next school year. And my understanding is that prior to this, their support staff contributed 1.3% and everyone else contributed 3%. And assuming they rolled that forward to the increase, support staff would now be paying 3%, teaching staff and others would be paying 6%. I don't know for a fact that that's where that landed, but I'm not aware of any other school districts in Dane County that do that. And that clearly we would need numbers there again too to see what impact that was, and then again look at where else we could. But it's an interesting question. I think it's worth thinking about. We had mentioned at one point, maybe just a discussion with Al this week, Dan or Jared, just to, if you have any time, and I know your week's already horrible, but there'd be a way just to get his thoughts on that, if that is done anywhere else, and just see how it's framed. But.
Mm-hmm.
Susan Manning.
Well, I think there were a couple things. The committee came very concerned because we've had some excellent budget presentations and excellent presentations about the deficit. And I think they felt somewhat unaware of those numbers and those presentations. So Jared did a really nice job of kind of summarizing some of that information today, but the whole committee wasn't there. So I think one of the major concerns was communication and timing. So I think it's really important that we use these opportunities to communicate the information about the budget deficit. And there were at least 4 members of the committee today that were there. I think maybe there were 7 present, who said, what other reductions are you looking at? What other pieces have you evaluated? So again, I think communication will help us as we move forward. the other thing that they were very concerned about was changing this at a time when the enrollment period hasn't occurred. So generally their enrollment. So if we do this now and implement this in September, their open enrollment period to change to another plan or think about that isn't until October. So there was great consensus to at least minimally delay this until January so that they understand, one, that we're reviewing this and this may be something the board moves forward on, and then to look at other opportunities, things that Susan talked about, things that Elizabeth brought out. They also talked about some type of program that would even out those who participate, those who don't participate. So it's a more level playing field. And maybe we would have less participants. There was a great deal of discussion, and I think Dan was taking notes in the meeting. So that may be helpful for the board to see that. But I sincerely appreciate having been on this committee and watched the concerns that we had today. And actually, I got phone calls all weekend because they were just unaware that this was a major thing that the board, and then all of a sudden it's on the agenda for action. So I appreciate that Dan recommended more discussion. That's really helpful.
Okay, any more questions or concerns?
I have a
Peter?
question.
Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, there's two things. One, I'm concerned about this issue and the implications of changing the contributions in the middle of the enrollment period. That does seem to have does seem to be an issue with fairness there. And wondering if there's any implications. Are we allowed to do that? I know that teachers all get a new contract over the year, and so maybe that comes into play. But in a normal work environment, you make the changes at the enrollment periods. You don't make the changes in the middle of it, and let people choose whether or not they, under new conditions, they want to move forward. The other concern is I was sort of under the impression that this had been discussed with the healthcare committee, and there was the people were understanding this, and apparently there was less understanding than I'm aware than I was aware of. And I was just wondering if someone could review the discussions of this proposal where we've had them with the healthcare committee or any other teachers or MGA or any other groups to point. So sort of what's a little brief synopsis of the discussions we've already had.
Well, that being on the healthcare committee, but just looking at the recommendations from 2019, the fourth one, and this was not, I think it could be interpreted a lot of ways. It wasn't written real clearly, but it says adjusting staff contributions above 5% is a board decision that the committee recognized the above adjustments would mitigate. So in other words, I think their understanding was that the kinds of copays and changes in the plan that they added would hopefully mitigate against the increase in premium costs that we were seeing at the time. And in fact, they did. It did solve the problem.
I know. I saw that document. I was asking somebody who participated in those meetings, Dan or Jared or somebody, what sort of discussions that have been had recently.
Sure. Yeah.
And then I'll talk about the personnel committee, but no, you can go ahead and do that. Yeah, that's fine.
I'm sorry. Yeah, we talked about it extensively, and the committee is well aware of the data about our comparable school districts and what everyone else is paying, and it was pretty clear pretty early on as we were formulating the recommendations that was not the priority. That the committee really felt that if there were opportunities to make plan changes to help deal with the increasing insurance costs, that their preference certainly was not a premium contribution. And thus you saw the recommendation was to add the deductible and the copay. And but they also, there was, certainly clear that the board is constantly going to have to, revisit that. I don't think it's fair to say that there is expectation it was going to happen so quickly, because that was a significant savings. The recommendation actually resulted in a decrease in a premium contribution. And so I don't think anyone anticipated this huge increase in enrollment. We know that we had been seeing some increased enrollment, historically, but I think we're all caught off guard about the how much it increased again, and so I would say that it's fair that no one on the committee expected the board to be coming back this quickly and talking about premium contribution. But I think it would also be fair to say that it was clear that that was always going to be on the table as a future cost savings measure. I just don't think it was expected to be so quickly. And I don't think any of us, myself included, expected to have this discussion so quickly.
Well, and Peter, I sit on that committee, and I agree with your questions. It was my impression from the discussions that we had, and then I thought that was well articulated in this memo, and that is that we understand there's this list of things we can do to help save money. And so let's do these. And I think they're understanding that this was a 3-year plan. So to have, again, until Dan sent the memo out, they didn't really feel they'd had any notification at all that this was on the table for an action item. So I think it's helpful. So that's what we've been hearing a lot about, is this concern about, we didn't know you were going to do this because we finished this work back in June of 2019, and we haven't met since that time to have any discussion about it. We didn't meet last fall. So you're right. You're seeing exactly what their concerns were. The timing and the fact that they thought it, at least for a period of time, had been, quote, resolved.
Yeah. I'm just trying to understand the sort of different information I'm getting about the sequence of things from different people, different organizations. And so thank you for everyone who contributed to help understand that. Just to review, because this is the important part of the issue, Jared, could you go over like last year and next year's increases in healthcare costs that we're seeing as both as a percentage and as a dollar amount?
Are you referring to the premiums that we're going to be charging, that's being charged for 2019-20?
No, our total costs.
Okay. So as we've talked about before, last year when we ended the fiscal year, we had 398 plans, and that was broken down by 78 single and 320. So we had about 87% participation. As the committee did their work, they made the co-payment or the deductible and the co-pay changes, which resulted in a 1.42% reduction in our premium. So they did what they, the task that we had in front of them, because part of the reason is we were seeing a 7.9% increase in premiums the previous 2 years. And obviously that was a large impact to the budget, and trying to lower that so we could push more money into salaries. But what happened is, even though we saw a premium reduction, we actually saw an increase in participation. And so what's interesting about with health insurance is our health insurance year runs January to December. However, our fiscal year runs July through June. So in the numbers I show you, that $518,000 is not an impact in one fiscal year completely. So we're not going to see a complete change. We're not going to see our budget increase by June 30th of this year by $518,000. That's going to be split over this last half of our fiscal year and the first part of it. However, where we're seeing this $504,000 deficit comes from a number of areas. Obviously, school districts are not funded properly. We'll start with that. Number two is that we are not seeing necessarily the enrollment like that we need to see to continue. We're only seeing an increase of 1.46, 1.5% increase in revenue, which drives our costs. And then we have an upcoming January for 2021 where we're going to see a 5.9% increase in our premiums. That was what was negotiated as a cap. Now it could come back a little lower. We won't find those numbers out until a little later. So when we're doing the budgeting side of things, I have to take a time and take a snapshot. And so that's where this 421 policies come at. And then obviously each group is a little different. So for example, our year-round employees, their contribution or their the budget impact for them is 6 months at the health insurance premiums of 2020 and 6 months of the health and premiums of 2021. Teachers are 4 months at 2020 and 8 months at 2021. So it doesn't line up perfectly. And so, but I wanted just to show in this financial overview that we did see a reduction in our premiums that was being charged to the district. However, what really created that large increase was because of enrollment, which then when you see that increase in enrollment, and then we know in January, we're going to see an increase of a 5.9% in our premiums, it's sort of that continued domino effect. So ultimately right now we saw our decrease in premiums for 2020. However, for 2021, sort of a mouthful to say, 2021, we are expecting to see premiums increase by 5.9%.
Good, thank you. I mean, part of the story here is that we're trying to find a way to pay for these increasing costs of healthcare. That is a benefit we're giving the teachers. That's getting harder to afford every year. Yeah.
And one of the challenges that we have is that by making some of these changes, you don't free up large amounts of money that can be shifted from healthcare to salary structure. It takes a couple of years. It's similar to our retirement plans. I mean, 10 years ago, or 8 years ago, the district made a significant change to their health or for the retirement system. However, we're paying on 3 different retirement plans right there. So when the old plan goes away, that's over $1 million that gets freed up. And then when we start comparing ourselves to other school districts and we start asking the question, why isn't our salary structure higher? Why aren't we paying higher wages to our staff? And as a document that I had showed, looking at the surrounding school districts and taking our enrollment, our, individuals that have enrolled into our health insurance, using their proration, if they are, a 0.8 or a 0.9, and doing the proration that I would do for my budget, and just looking at another school district that we, sometimes get compared against, looking at Verona, by just using their premium rate, that's over $1 million difference that we would be paying less if we had, a certain thing. But that's not necessarily going to be apples to apples because obviously medical trends, age of people that are there. And so I think that's always the challenging part is that we can make this change and we can potentially, if the board ultimately decided to do 300 or do that 5%, we saw a $340,000 savings. Well, we're also fighting a structural deficit that we've been given because of underfunding for school districts. So what we're doing is we're taking that $340,000 to be able to give raises that are just maybe at a 2%. It's not moving us forward. And so that becomes the biggest issue that we continue to battle every single year when we look at it.
Right. I mean, I would be much happier with this whole thing if we could adjust the plan and then use 100% of that money to increase salaries over and above the other rate of increase, the cost of living or wherever we are, because that's really what we should do, and what we really need to do as a district is to take money, reduce our healthcare costs and put that money into salaries, dollar for dollar, and that would make me a lot more comfortable than what we are doing, which is using these reductions to plug a deficit hole.
Correct.
So well, it sounds like possible action items 1 through 4, it seems like it needs to be postponed until this committee meeting this coming Thursday, and then we set up a special board meeting to come back to these and come up with a solution. Is that what I'm hearing?
At the very least.
Okay.
Yeah, we just won't. Yeah, we just shouldn't take action on these tonight. I don't think we're prepared to take action on these.
I agree.
I'm not prepared. I'm not prepared.
I would agree.
So if I was to say, can I hear a motion to postpone 1 through 4 possible action items until
we haven't made a motion to we haven't made a motion to do anything with those, so there's right now nothing to postpone. We can just go on with the meeting if we want.
Okay.
I agree with that. If you just leave them, if you leave the motion, so administration came forward with the recommendation, but there hasn't been any motion to move forward.
Right.
So without, right, Peter, without any action, you don't have to make a reaction.
Okay.
If you make a motion to postpone, then you've got to respond to that in terms of timing. If you just leave it, then Dan can put it back on it, you and Dan or the board will decide when to bring it back.
Okay, so no, I'm not making a motion, but I'm going to go ahead and just, Dan, we could just go ahead and possible action items 1 through 4 to be postponed. And we'll just go ahead and move to 5, 6, and 7. Okay, so let's move to the 5th possible action item, the 2020-2022 MG21 administrator contract. So do I have a motion to approve? Have approval of the MG21 administrator contract as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Susan, Manny?
Dan, would you just confirm, I think you have mentioned to us that this action item has been discussed with the MG21 administrative staff and is supported by that staff?
Correct. The MG21 governance board actually did vote and to recommend.
So their actual board is also, I thought they weren't meeting in something that we got from you. They said they aren't meeting till like next week, or they've already met and discussed this?
Yes, and they have made that recommendation.
Okay, and the administrative staff as well, Rebecca and
Rebecca's a teacher. These are the only administrators. That's what you're voting on.
I'm
the governance board is obviously the governing body for the charter school. So the governance board took action to make the recommendation for this position.
okay, and that's the governance board chaired by
Denise Peterson's the chair.
Peterson. Okay.
And they have a entire governance board. Bill McDade, Tom Stolper,
Steve Halverson. Yep.
Yeah, you know the group. Yep.
I guess I was just asking for, someone has had a discussion with the staff.
The staff is aware, yes.
I was going to say, usually Rebecca attends those meetings, does she not?
She does.
Right.
So.
Okay, any further discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor, Peter Sobel,
Aye.
Eric Hartz,
Aye.
Lorraine Gage,
Aye.
Elizabeth Cook,
Aye.
Susan Fox,
Aye.
Susan Manning,
Aye.
Andrew McKinney, aye. Ayes have it, motion carries. The 2020-2021 Coordinator and Dean of Students contracts. Can I have a motion to approve for approval of the 2020-2021 coordinator and dean of students contracts as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, roll call vote. Peter Sobel,
Aye.
Eric Hartz,
Aye.
Lorraine Gage,
Aye.
Elizabeth Cook,
Aye.
Susan Fox,
Aye.
Susan Manning,
Aye.
Andrew McKinney, aye. Ayes have it, motion carries. Next is carryover of the 2019-2020 vacation time for administrators. Can I have a motion to make this motion as presented?
So moved.
Do we need to read the motion? I mean, it was, I was just looking for it, but somebody could,
Yeah,
whoever made that motion could read it. Or, yeah. Move to allow administrators to use accrued 2019-2020 vacation allocation through July 31st, 2020 as presented.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, roll call vote. Peter Sobel,
Aye.
Eric Hartz,
Aye.
Lorraine Gage,
Aye.
Elizabeth Cook,
Aye.
Susan Fox,
Aye.
Susan Manning,
Aye.
Andrew McKinney, aye. The ayes have it, motion carries. Moving to discussion items, school renovations and construction update. Dan?
Okay, attached is the latest executive summary put together actually by the Findorf team. You'll see some pictures and updates on what's happening at the new elementary school, as well as the renovation projects at Glacial Drumlin and Winnequa. And I'm going to have Jared give you a little bit of an update, specifically what's going on with the water issue at Winnequa, which was actually outside of the renovation projects, but it's one that we've had to take on and incorporate at the same time. But other than the Winnequa project, are there any questions on the new school or GDS projects?
It's looking good out there.
Yeah, they're right on schedule. And a little bit of rain hasn't really set them back much at all. And so things are going well at both sites. Okay, Winnequa, major, renovations there, as you know, and we do have the final solution for the water issues. You can't really tell from that picture in the boiler room, but as they will look to remove that floor, I mean, the water is basically right at that floor level. And so Jared, do you want to talk a little bit about that part of the project?
Yep. So it's been a long process. A lot of smart people, not including myself, but smart people had to come together and really come up with a pretty interesting solution. So I'm going to start out with the really bad news and move to the good news, is that we had budgeted $400,000 for this project. We got our final price quote at $781,000 to do this. So it's going to be done because it needs to be done, but definitely a major impact to our budget. So we'll have to figure that out. What we've discovered is that the reason it's going to cost so much is there's lots of things that have to be moved. So if you've been to Winnequa and into behind the office area, that's where the old transformer is and the old chiller is and the generator. Well, all that actually has to be removed. And if you know the roofs at Winnequa, they hang over. Well, we need to dig 17 feet down right next to the building. Well, no backhoe can fit in underneath that So in addition to that, there's obviously safety requirements that for every foot you go down, you have to go out so it doesn't cave in on the individuals. So they have to only dig in length of like 8 feet, go down about 7 feet, bring another piece of equipment to go in the hole to go down the other 9 feet. And they have to piecemeal that through. Then when they get to the middle of Winnequa, they have to directionally drill underneath the connector to get the tubing through, because what we're doing is we're actually putting drain tile in along the building. Then in the maintenance room and the band room, they're cutting up all the flooring, which they have to carry out by hand because they can't put a bulldozer or anything downstairs. So they have to take it out in like 2x2 pieces, which obviously increases the cost for labor. And then they're putting tile in there, so all the water that will drain and then go into sub pumps and then be pumped out. But Winnequa is also an old building, so when buildings were built a while ago, all the electrical service was inside the building, and that's not standard anymore. So all the electrical has to come out of the building because MG&E needs to have access from the outside of the building. In addition to that, they have to replace the whole transformer because it's so old, and do a lot of rewiring to everything. So obviously I think we finally came up with a solution. My comment always is that once we're done with this, I don't ever want to call from Angie or anybody to tell me that there is any water in that building. But yeah, so, and the good part of everything is that they believe they can get it done this summer. So we will be ready for school in the fall.
I feel like if 2020 could be embodied in a construction project, it would be this one. That was incredible, Jared.
It's amazing.
So yeah.
How much money can we save by buying you a shovel, Jared?
You might not be ready by the fall then.
I was saying, get out there now, Jared.
Yeah, and at least we haven't had the flooding yet.
Right. So
you could just stay dry so you can do the project.
So what was the good news?
So the good news is they can get it done.
Yeah,
this
well,
summer.
yeah, Jared understands.
And that is good news, but
It is good news, but not as exciting as like something.
Keep an eye on the lake levels, and if you see the sandbags come out, then move the project a little faster.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Thanks, Jared, for that update. Oh my goodness. All right. Any more questions about the school renovations and the construction update? All right. Future meetings.
Okay, so our timeline is this. You need to adopt the preliminary budget by June 30th. If you are going to do anything, take action on either health insurance premiums or compensation, for support staff and so on, and you want it to be effective on the July payroll, then you would need to do something early next week. If you are not anticipating that you're going to have any action that will affect July 3rd payroll, then you have between now and June 30th. Given that we haven't really discussed about what your solutions might be, I guess if you're available, I'd recommend you meet sooner than later. Not that you want more meetings, but it's conceivable you might not be ready to make a decision at your next meeting. So I guess one thought would be next Monday, the 22nd, if you're all available, to call a special meeting to consider those 4 items that you did not take action on tonight. And you wouldn't be required to take action that evening either, but again, at some point the preliminary budget needs to be adopted. So
I'm okay with next Monday.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Peter?
I'm okay with next Monday. And I think we should schedule that, and maybe we don't do it. Maybe we don't have a meeting, but I think we should schedule it next Monday.
Yeah.
I would agree, because I think this might, at least we can have more discussion, and then if we can't decide anything by then, it gives us more time, but.
I'm available.
Are we looking at about 4:30, 5 o'clock?
Whatever works for people. It's okay
Yeah.
with me. I don't
Yeah.
have a plan commission meeting that night, which I thought I did, but it got canceled today, so.
What would be the earliest that folks would be able to meet? Did you,
That'd be about 4:30 for me. That's the earliest for me.
No, that's fine with me too, 4:30.
That works for me also.
That works for me.
Yep.
I'm gonna say maybe for me. But go
Right.
ahead, just me.
Okay,
okay, so I'm here Monday, June 22nd at 4:30, special meeting. The agenda items will be the 4 possible action items that you did not take action on this evening.
correct.
Okay, and then we'll be noticing tomorrow a personnel committee meeting for Thursday at 4 o'clock, which will be a meet and confer with the specific, and Susan, I'll shoot you the draft agenda before we notice it tomorrow, but I would think we'd want to be specific about, as far as a discussion topic, to talk about healthcare benefits, as opposed to just an open-ended to talk about.
Right, I
No.
would agree.
Okay, so I'll say some draft language to look at before we post it.
Okay.
Right,
Okay, and then
Okay,
you'll notice
yeah.
we've got several policy committee meetings. We're back to work starting tomorrow.
all right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for the future dates. And now, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
There you go. All right, all in favor, starting with Peter Sobel,
Aye.
Eric Hartz,
Aye.
Lorraine Gage,
Aye.
Elizabeth Cook,
Aye.
Susan Fox,
Aye.
Susan Manning,
Aye.
Andrew McKinney. Aye. Motion carries. All right, we are adjourned. We can stop the recording now.
I'm going to end because then we'll be finished. Good night, everybody.
Aye.
night.
Night.